He said, "That red mark is just pasta sauce." I stared at him, holding the shirt between two fingers, like it might start confessing on its own. The smear was too perfect, too bright, too shaped like a lipstick trace someone tried to rub off in a hurry. He smiled, wide, nervous, almost salesman-level rehearsed, and for a moment, I wondered if he practiced lies the same way he practiced pitching regional supply contracts. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "I was eating in the car," he added, shrugging, as if smearing marinara across a white dress shirt during a business lunch was something normal adults did. "Messy sandwich. You know me." That was the moment I knew I wasn't losing my mind, not because of the stain, because of the performance. He was over-explaining, and Brian only over-explained when he knew I was catching on. I didn't say anything. I simply placed the shirt gently in the laundry basket, like a forensic tech sealing evidence, and gave him the kind of polite, vacant smile suburban wives give in yogurt commercials. He kissed my cheek, grabbed his keys, and walked out the door in a rush, probably convinced he'd dodged a question I never even asked. Perfect, because silence is gasoline. And I was ready to light a match, just not yet. Our neighborhood is the kind of place where people mow their lawns in straight lines and judge you if your wreath is out of season. Perfect hedges, perfect driveways, perfect facades. It's all so well manicured that you forget real life exists under the stucco. Domestic storms don't match the HOA aesthetic, so everyone learns to hide them behind plantation shutters. I used to fit right in. Elena Carter, elementary school teacher, certified sandwich maker, and self-appointed queen of everything is fine. You'd see me out there in the mornings, coffee in one hand, recycling bin in the other, waving at neighbors who pretended they weren't counting how many Amazon boxes I dragged to the curb. And Brian, my husband, the suburban success story, regional sales rep, expert in handshakes, and apparently an advanced level pasta sauce on collar victim. He'd been different lately. New cologne, new gym membership, new habit of guarding his phone like it contained missile codes. And now this stain. Still, I wasn't going to be the wife who screams, throws dishes, or demands explanations. There's power in patience. Ask any crocodile. 2 days later, he came home late again. He smelled like hotel air conditioning and nervous energy. "Client dinner," he said, loosening his tie. 6 of us, big account. "Great," I said, chopping vegetables with a smile that didn't touch my eyes. "Did the client also smear pasta sauce on your shirt again, or was it someone else's turn?" He froze. Just a millisecond, but long enough to confirm everything. "Funny," he said. "Real funny." That's the thing about lies. They age faster than truth. A truth can sit in daylight forever. A lie starts rotting the second it's spoken. The real turning point happened 3 days later, when I went looking for his spare keys. He always tossed his jacket over the dining chair, because putting it on the actual hook felt too formal. I checked the pockets, and instead of keys, I found a folded piece of paper, old school, printed and creased, like someone wanted a physical reminder of a good time. I opened it. Hotel invoice, weekend stay. 2 guests, room for Brian Carter and Harper Vaughn. I stared at the name. Not just a Harper, no, a Harper Vaughn. Sounded like the kind of woman who used expensive conditioner and called wine notes of berry. My brain, however, was calm, not shocked, not even surprised. It was more like I'd just located the missing puzzle piece I already knew existed. And that was the precise second I decided. I wasn't confronting him. I was collecting him. I scanned the receipt, photographed it, emailed a copy to myself, private folder, no trace. Then I folded it back up and slid it into his jacket exactly as before, like a respectful archaeologist returning a find to its original position. That's when I realized something important. Anyone can panic. Not everyone can perform. And I was about to perform the role of loving, oblivious wife better than any woman had ever done it. Dinner that night was chicken Alfredo, just to keep the pasta theme alive. Brian sat across from me, scrolling his phone under the table like a teenager. I watched him the way teachers watch students right before a pop quiz. "How was your day?" I asked sweetly. "Busy," he said, not looking up. I smiled. "Want a breadstick?" He nodded, and I handed him one like I was feeding a zoo exhibit. He didn't notice, which was poetic. Inside, my thoughts were sharp and controlled. Do not accuse. Do not warn him. Let him keep lying. He'll dig the hole deeper if he thinks no one sees it. If he was the magician, I was the audience member who'd already spotted the string behind the floating card. My next step was reconnaissance. Suburban edition. I typed Harper Vaughn into Facebook, and bam, there she was. Blonde, spray tan glow, a smile like a real estate billboard, and a bio that read, event planner, wife, lover of sunsets and loyalty. Oh, the irony. Married. Tagged photos with a guy named Greg. He looked kind, gentle, the kind of man who irons shirts and remembers birthdays. Poor Greg. He was probably taking the trash out while Harper was busy scheduling events at the Marriott. I didn't message him. Not yet. Timing is key. You don't serve dessert before soup. 2 days later, Brian claimed he had a work trip out of town. I nodded like an encouraging sitcom wife while mentally bookmarking the exact date and time he left. Then I followed him. Not directly. This isn't a spy movie and I don't own binoculars. I simply waited until he turned the corner, then got into my car, drove the opposite way, and circled back through the next street over. I saw his car parked in front of an unfamiliar house. Same make, same dent from backing into a shopping cart last year. He got out, smoothed his shirt, and walked up the driveway. Door opened, Harper, in workout leggings and a smile. He leaned in and kissed her. There are moments in life where people snap. Mine was quieter, more surgical, like a switch clicking into place. I didn't cry, I didn't gasp. I just memorized every detail. Timing, location, house number. And then I drove away, calm as a lake, because now it wasn't suspicion, it was evidence. That night I cooked lasagna. He came home smelling like hotel lotion and guilt. "How was the client meeting?" I asked. "Long," he said. "Exhausting." He sat, ate, complimented the food, kissed my forehead, the whole charade. Meanwhile, I was already planning Act 2. The gossip chain started brewing the next morning. My neighbor, Linda Monroe, chief HOA officer and full-time human megaphone, cornered me at the end of the driveway. "Did you hear?" she whispered, leaning closer like a raccoon looking for chips. "Someone said Harper's been having private lunches with a married man. I'm not naming names, but you know how these things go." I blinked. "Wow, that's awful." "You think it's true?" she asked, eyes burning with suburban hunger. I shrugged. "Well, pasta sauce can get messy." She squinted, trying to decode me. She'd fail. People like Linda always fail, because they assume quiet equals clueless. Later that day, I sat in my classroom grading spelling tests while forming a different kind of sentence in my head. "Hello, Greg. We need to talk." But I didn't hit send, because I wasn't done gathering. I needed one more thing. Proof that Brian's little romance was not just emotional, but funded by joint accounts. If he wanted to cheat, fine. But he wasn't going to do it with my paycheck involved. So when he went to shower that night, I casually went through his work bag. Not touching anything, just opening the front pocket, flash drive, labeled Q3 reports. I plugged it into my laptop while dinner simmered, and there it was. Hotel invoices, transaction logs, expense reports marked client dinner that were actually two-person stays at a downtown hotel. Not only cheating, falsifying company expenses. Beautiful. I copied everything. Put the drive back, stirred the sauce, served dinner. He never suspected a thing. Later, he kissed me goodnight. I watched him sleep, the way one might study a stranger on a train who doesn't realize you know their stop before they do. I wasn't planning tears. I was planning consequences, not just for him, for her too, because the universe may take its sweet time, but karma is faster when it has a personal driver. And in this story, that driver was me, Elena Carter, wife, teacher, silent collector of truth, and soon-to-be storm. The next morning, I took a selfie. Just me, holding the shirt with the pasta sauce. Not smiling, not sad, just documenting. Then I zoomed in on the stain and cropped it. No face, no context, just the mark. I saved it. Not to confront Brian, but to send it exactly where it would detonate the loudest. To Harper's spouse, not yet, but soon, because timing is everything, and I was only warming up. That night, Brian walked into the kitchen humming. He wrapped his arms around me like the last 2 weeks hadn't been a countdown. "You're quiet lately," he said. "Just tired," I replied. He kissed my cheek. "I'll make it up to you. Business trip next weekend. After that, I'm all yours." I smiled, sweet as syrup. That business trip? Already booked under his name. With Harper, at the same hotel. Same room type. Same invoice format. He just didn't know yet that this time, the guest list would include more than 2 names. And one of them would be karma. The thing about pretending to know nothing is that it requires absolute commitment. You can't half-play clueless. You have to go full naive housewife, smile through lies, nod at nonsense, and sprinkle in just enough "oh really" to keep the cheater confident that his secret life still lives in the shadows. Meanwhile, you're already rearranging the lighting so that shadow turns into spotlight. By the time the weekend rolled around, I had copied every receipt, grabbed screenshots of Brian's travel confirmations, organized files with names like Brian Fraud 1, and even tucked away a few voice memos of his more creative excuses. I wasn't sure yet what exact order I'd deploy them in, but if revenge was chess, I was done moving pawns. I was lining up rooks, but I still had to live the surface life. Teacher by day, quiet suburban nice girl by afternoon, silent architect of marital collapse by night. I was starting to think I deserved a cape. Monday morning at school, the copy machine jammed for the 3rd time, and my co-worker, Sophie, leaned against the counter with the body language of someone who'd given up on both technology and humanity. "You look too calm for a woman fighting with a copier," she said. "I've accepted that it wins," I replied. "Saves energy." She squinted. "You're doing that thing again. The, 'I'm fine, but actually planning something epic' face." "What face?" I asked. "That one." She pointed, the calm like a quiet storm face. I shrugged. Sophie was one of the few people I liked in this school, but her biggest flaw was being annoyingly perceptive. She wasn't the type to dig for gossip, though. She was the type to offer snacks and bail money if needed. "Promise me if you ever bury a man, you'll at least text first," she said. "No men will be buried," I answered, and that was technically true. "I'm just observing life, and people, and stupid excuses involving pasta sauce." She paused. "Ah, it happened again?" "He leveled up," I said. He added messy sandwich to the story arc. Real character development. Sophie sucked in a sharp breath. "Oh no, he's writing fan fiction about his own lies. That's when they start believing their script." "Which just makes it easier," I said. She grinned. "You scare me in the best way." "Good. She should see me when I'm labeling evidence folders." After school, I took advantage of my daily stop at Linda Monroe's suburban information booth, also known as her mailbox. She was already outside in her pastel sweater, sipping tea, definitely waiting to trap a passerby like a talkative Venus flytrap. "Elena," she called out, "I heard something absolutely crazy and I just knew I had to tell you." I smiled like someone unfolding a napkin at a dinner they didn't want to attend. "Do tell." "Well, apparently Harper is having personal lunches during work hours, with someone not her spouse, and it's becoming quite the topic." She leaned in, voice low enough to suggest secrecy, but loud enough that if anyone was within 30 feet, they'd still hear her. I widened my eyes just enough to look politely shocked. "Really?" "Oh, yes. And someone said they saw her with a car that wasn't Greg's, a black sedan." I nodded very slowly. Brian drove a black sedan. "Congratulations, Linda. Your powers of observation are dazzling." "She always seemed so graceful," Linda added. "Maybe a little too graceful. You know what they say. Women that coordinated are hiding something." "I'll keep that in mind," I said. "If I ever get too coordinated, check my hotel invoices." She laughed, thinking it was a joke. Oh, what joy it is to tell the truth wrapped in humor. The next 2 days were strategic silence. I wanted Brian comfortable, relaxed, overconfident. And he was. He started humming around the house again, wearing the smugness of someone convinced he'd covered his tracks. He even tried to initiate small talk, which would have been cute if it weren't so insulting. At dinner he said, "You've been quieter lately." "Maybe I'm just listening more," I said. "To what?" he asked. "To everything you don't say." He blinked. I took a sip of water. Silence is psychological sandpaper. The longer it drags, the more a liar starts to feel rubbed raw. "Anyway," he said quickly, "I might have another business trip this weekend. Big meeting." "Of course," I said sweetly. "Client dinners do get messy." He stopped chewing. I smiled. He resumed chewing very slowly, like a man tasting fear, but trying to pretend it's time. That night, I sat at my laptop and finally drafted the message to Harper's spouse. Not a paragraph, not a dramatic essay. Simple and surgical. "You don't know me, but I believe you deserve to see this." Attached, the zoomed-in lipstick-stained photo, followed by the hotel invoice with both names. I didn't sign it, I didn't explain, I didn't send it yet. Revenge is soufflé, served too early and it collapses. My timing still needed one more ingredient. Wednesday morning was the day everything escalated in a way I didn't expect. I was drinking coffee at the dining table when Brian rushed in, holding his phone like it had personally betrayed him. "Did you mess with my work email?" he demanded. "No," I said calmly, "but that's an interesting first question." He paced. "Someone sent something to my manager, an invoice from months ago. Who would do that?" "Maybe someone who noticed that your job paid for your weekend getaway with Harper," I said, without raising my voice or my eyebrows. His face froze. I didn't smile. I just buttered toast. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, like a malfunctioning puppet. "Elena?" "Oh, don't worry," I interrupted. "I didn't include the room service charges. The crab cakes were a nice touch, though." "You don't understand." "No," I said. "I understand perfectly. You lied. You spent joint money on a hotel with someone else. You labeled it as business. Classic romance, really." He stared, stunned. This was the first time I'd acknowledged knowing anything. I could practically see the gears jamming in his head. "I can fix this," he muttered, grabbing his phone like it was a time machine. I shrugged. "Good luck. HR usually loves to hear from employees who falsify travel reports." He stormed out. No apology, no denial, no excuse. Just panic, which meant I had entered phase 2, cracking the facade. 3 hours later, during my lunch break, I sat on a bench outside the school and finally hit send on the message to Harper's husband. 1 second, 2 seconds. Sent. Somewhere across town, another marriage just swallowed a grenade. I didn't feel guilt, not even a flick. If anything, I felt like I'd just opened a window in a stale room. After school, I returned home to find Brian on the phone in the living room, pacing like a man trying to negotiate with gravity. "I can explain," he said to whoever was on the line. "It was just a misunderstanding. I was helping a coworker. She had hotel points and needed someone to— No, that sounds worse. Let me rephrase." I walked past him and grabbed a snack from the pantry. He looked at me like I was holding his future. He hung up and said, "This is getting out of hand." "Oh, I agree," I said. "You should have wiped the lipstick mark better. Rookie move." "Elena, please, we can handle this privately." "No, Brian, you already handled it privately. I'm handling it publicly." He blinked 3 times like he was rebooting. "You're overreacting," he said. "I'm reacting," I corrected. "You just didn't expect consequences because you counted on silence." "Do you want our marriage to fall apart?" "It already did," I said. "You just didn't notice because you were busy eating messy pasta in hotel rooms." He exhaled dramatically and walked out, probably to call Harper and brainstorm a new round of synchronized lying. I wasn't worried. I already knew his next 3 moves. That evening, I received a message request on Facebook from Greg Vaughn. "Is this real?" Attached was the same photo I sent him. I replied, "Yes." 5 minutes passed. Then he sent another message. "Can we meet? I have something you need to see." Well, that escalated quickly. I stared at the screen for a moment. I had planned to gradually involve Greg later, slow simmer, not full boil. But I couldn't deny the curiosity. What could he possibly show me? I texted, "Tomorrow, public place, 5 p.m., corner cafe." He replied, "I'll be there." The next morning in the staff room, Sophie was pouring coffee that looked like it had been brewed during the Civil War. She squinted at me. "You're glowing. Did you get revenge sleep? That's like regular sleep, but more satisfying." "I sent a message to someone who needed it," I said. She nodded like a seasoned therapist. "Phase 1 of justice complete. What's next?" "Meeting an ally." She sipped her coffee and winced. "Do I need to prep a bail fund?" "Not yet," I said, "but keep $50 free just in case." At 5 p.m. sharp, I walked into Corner Cafe. It smelled like overpriced beans and regret, but the lighting was good, and the tables were spaced enough that no one could eavesdrop without looking obvious. Greg was already there. He looked even more exhausted than his photos, square-jawed, polite features, the kind of man who held doors for strangers and believed loyalty was part of the wedding contract. He stood when I approached, a gentleman reflex, sad but refreshing. "Eleanor?" he asked. "Yes," I said, shaking his hand. We sat. He slid his phone across the table. "I think this belongs in your puzzle." I pressed play. A screen recording of text messages appeared. Harper and Brian. Not flirty, businesslike, cold. All about how to cover the affair. "Your wife is suspicious. Tell her the stain was from lunch." "I'll say I met a client at an Italian place. Use the card with your name, not mine. She won't check. She trusts you." And then the one that made something inside me harden, like concrete. "If things get messy, I'll say she's unstable. Easy." Not my wife, just she. Not unstable as insult, but as strategy. I sat there, watching the messages, feeling something new. Not rage, not heartbreak, but focus. "He planned the excuse before the stain even happened," I said softly. Greg nodded. "And she wasn't faithful to me long before this either. I checked the timestamps. This wasn't their first weekend away." I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them with perfect calm. "Are you ready to make both of them regret assuming we'd stay quiet?" "Yes," he said. No hesitation, just solid, broken-hearted clarity. "Perfect. 2 spouses wronged. 1 target. Well, 2. When I got home, Brian was sitting at the table, staring at nothing, the look of a man whose confidence was dissolving faster than his job security. "HR wants a meeting," he muttered. "Someone sent them the invoice. It violates travel policy. I could lose everything. Oh no, I said, voice soaked in concern, with not even a teaspoon of sincerity. Almost like choices have outcomes. He glared. You don't understand what this means for me. You didn't understand what it meant for us, I said. So you're right, we're both learning new things this week. After he stormed off to make more damage control phone calls, I packed a neat stack of his shirts. Not to kick him out yet, just to remind myself how well things were going. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and wrote 3 things in my notebook. 1. Greg, confirmed ally. 2. Harper's career depends on image. Attack image. 3. Brian thinks this is repairable. Must remove illusion. And at the bottom, I wrote, silence first, ruin second, exit third. It wasn't poetry, but it was a plan. The next afternoon, Harper's social media went quiet. Not deleted, just unusually still, which meant Greg had confronted her, which meant the ripple was now a wave. Brian came home frantic, asking questions I pretended not to hear. Did you tell anyone? Did you send anything? Elena, answer me. I stirred soup. You're impossible, he snapped. And you're predictable, I replied. You're sabotaging my life. No, I corrected. You sabotaged your life. I'm just forwarding documents. He stared at me like he had never seen me before. Which was fair. He hadn't. Not this version. The version who took his favorite shirt, folded it, and placed it in a suitcase labeled Return to Sender. Not yet delivered, but soon. Very soon. Because the final act was coming. And I wanted front row seats. The universe has a strange sense of humor. One day, you're just a wife who pays the mortgage on time and alphabetizes the spice rack. The next, you're watching the neighborhood gossip network implode because your cheating husband and his event planner soulmate accidentally turned suburbia into a live soap opera. By Wednesday afternoon, the entire community knew something was wrong in Harper Vaughn's perfect life. Not because I told them, because Greg did. Turns out, quiet men with IT jobs can be surprisingly efficient once emotionally detonated. He had screenshots. He had timestamps. He had a level of calm that felt less like serenity and more like someone preparing to remove a tumor with a spoon. The first explosion happened at the grocery store, the second at the gym, the third, my personal favorite, at the PTA committee meeting. But I wasn't there for that one. I just heard about it in stereo because 3 different neighbors called me to innocently check in within 40 minutes. The first to ring, Linda Monroe, Queen of Neighborhood Intel. Eleanor, she whispered, as if the phone had ears. Did you hear what happened at the PTA? Harper showed up late and Greg followed her in. He confronted her right there, right in front of the cookie table. Wow, I said, biting back a smile. Did people see? Elena, she said gravely, people recorded. Of course they did. If you can't trust your marriage, at least you can trust modern phone cameras. That evening, I walked into the kitchen to find Brian holding his phone with both hands like it contained a live bomb. They're talking about me online, he said. Who? I asked, rinsing vegetables. People from work. They heard something about travel funds. My manager wants a written explanation. Maybe write pasta sauce in bold font, I said. Elena, this isn't a joke. I agree, I said. You shouldn't joke on company expense reports. Accounting people hate when humor shows up in transactions. He glared, then exhaled sharply like a man who believed sighing hard enough could reset reality. I'll fix it, he said. I'll delete the emails, reorder the receipts, sort it out with Harper. Harper, I repeated, you're still in contact with her. She's involved, he snapped. We need to get our stories straight. I put the knife down gently. Brian, you already had a story straight. It was called marriage. He didn't respond. He walked out. Probably to call Harper. Probably unaware that the world as he knew it was already sliding downhill in dress shoes. The real fun started the next morning when I walked into the front office of my school and found two teachers whispering like teenagers in a locker room. They stopped talking the moment they saw me. I raised an eyebrow. If you're discussing lesson plans, blink twice. They blinked 0 times. So, not lesson plans. After a pause, one of them leaned closer. Is it true about Harper? I shrugged. Depends what version you heard. This week has a menu. Someone said she's been having a thing with a married man and it's blown up everywhere. I've heard rumors, I said. Oh, honey, she whispered. They aren't rumors anymore. Someone leaked screenshots. Not someone. Greg, precise, efficient, beautifully brutal in the softest way. Poor guy, she added. He looked so crushed in that video. You can practically feel the betrayal. I nodded. Harper underestimated the quiet one. And the wife, she whispered. I smiled. She's fine. She's grading spelling tests and making soup. There was a pause. Soup, she echoed. Revenge burns calories, I said. Soup helps. She stared at me like I was either a genius or a supervillain. Honestly, I enjoy the overlap. Later that afternoon, I received a text from Greg. She's moving out. I didn't even have to ask. She knows it's over. I'm sorry you had to go through this too. I typed back, don't apologize. We didn't light the match. We're just making sure the right people stand close to the flame. He replied with a single sentence. I didn't know you were this calm. I wrote, that's because they expect tears, not strategy. When I got home, Brian was sitting at the dining table, staring into space, one hand gripping his phone like it owed him money. I talked to Harper, he said. Oh, did she send you a sympathy fruit basket? This isn't funny, he snapped. Actually, it's the funniest thing I've ever seen, I said, opening the fridge. She said Greg is divorcing her because someone sent him that photo. Well, I said, uncapping a jar, someone has good aim. He stood up so fast the chair skidded. Elena, did you send it? I turned. Slowly, calmly, as if discussing school dismissal schedules. Of course I did. He stared at me like I'd just confessed to arson. You can't do that, he said. I did. You ruined her marriage. Correction, she ruined her marriage. I just forwarded the memo. You've destroyed everything. Brian, I said, leaning against the counter, you destroyed everything the minute you made out with Harper in a hotel room and tried to pass off her lipstick as ravioli. He opened his mouth, closed it again, hands trembling slightly. Not with fear, but with the dawning realization that he was no longer the one controlling the narrative. And that's when I knew I was finally winning. By Saturday, the gossip wildfire was fully active. People weren't even whispering anymore. They were analyzing, theorizing, connecting dots like they were building a crime board in a detective show. And guess what happens when the suburbs smell drama? They dress up, bring snacks, and pretend they're above it while eating every crumb. Harper's reputation was sliding. Her inbox was probably filled with, per my last email, from angry brides, suddenly reconsidering their floral budget. And I already knew her next big event was a charity gala scheduled for the following week. Which meant an audience. Which meant vulnerability. Which meant opportunity. So I added this line to my notebook: sabotage event, public humiliation, no physical harm, max impact. Then I closed the notebook and slept like a saint. Sunday evening, Brian walked into the bedroom holding a suitcase. I'm staying at a hotel for a few days, he announced. Very thematic, I said, not looking up from my book. This is temporary, he added. We'll talk when things calm down. I nodded. Of course. You go calm things down. Just don't mix up the pasta sauce this time. He didn't reply. He zipped the suitcase, walked downstairs, and left the house. No apology, no admission, no remorse. Cowardice is surprisingly loud when it exits a room. And Monday afternoon, the real shift began. I arrived home, checked the mail, and found an envelope addressed to both of us. From Tina Marlowe, HR Compliance, yes. The HR Tina. The one I politely CC'd on the invoice from Brian's romantic getaway. I opened it. Inside was a formal notice. Suspicion of falsified expense reports under review. Pending investigation, all corporate accounts paused. Meeting required with HR and supervisor. I smiled, like a woman smiling at a sunset she scheduled herself. Brian was no longer just in personal trouble. He was now in professional, financial, and long-term future trouble. Which meant step 1 was complete. The fall had begun. That evening, I sat by the window and watched a group of neighbors walking their dogs. They moved slowly, pausing in front of every mailbox like suburban vultures circling mail-shaped carcasses. I cracked the window just in time to hear someone say, "I heard Brian was using company funds for hotel rooms." "What? With Harper?" "Mm-hmm. And now HR is involved. Karma moves fast on cul-de-sacs." Then, like perfect comedic timing, one of them added, "I always knew he moisturized too confidently." I closed the window, laughing. Suburbia may be artificial, but justice here. Justice is organic. The next day, Greg and I met again, this time not in a cafe, but in a hardware store parking lot. He handed me a USB drive. "What's this?" I asked. "Harper's shared folder. She used my laptop sometimes. She wasn't careful. There are messages, bookings, calendar reminders, even a mood board for the hotel room decor." I blinked. She made a mood board for cheating. She titled it Weekend Escape, with hearts. I put a hand over my mouth, not from shock, but because laughter isn't always appropriate during partnerships forged in betrayal. "You're doing well," Greg said. "Better than most would." "I'm not doing well," I corrected. "I'm doing strategic." He nodded. "What comes next?" "Harper has a charity gala next week," I said. "She'll try to look polished, steady, untouched. I plan to interrupt that." "You need help?" "No, I need witnesses." He smiled. "We have plenty." That night, I opened the USB drive and studied Harper's digital life. Perfect fonts, soft pink folders, an entire digital shrine built around pretending her life was ideal. I didn't feel sorry for her, because she knew exactly what she was doing. She didn't slip, she climbed. She saw someone else's husband as a step on her ladder, and I was about to kick that ladder out from under her in heels. The next morning, while ironing a blouse for work, I suddenly remembered the day Brian proposed. How proud he'd been, how serious, how earnest. Then I remembered him kissing Harper on her porch. The contrast was so sharp, it almost made me laugh. It didn't hurt anymore. It just looked stupid, like a scene rewritten by someone who didn't understand the original characters. Later that day, I received a text from a former co-worker of Harper's. "You didn't get this from me, but the gala has a silent auction and a scripted welcome speech. If someone were to interrupt either, it would be memorable." Oh, the universe wasn't just offering matches now. It was handing me gasoline. I texted back, "You just made my week." Brian came to the house that night, unannounced, knocking like a man who believed he still lived here. I opened the door halfway. He looked disheveled, not like a tragic romantic hero, more like a man who'd been living out of a hotel mini-fridge and trying to eat his feelings through vending machine pretzels. "I need my navy suit," he said. "No," I replied. "What?" "It's in one of the bags I packed, on Harper's porch, labeled Return to Cheetah. If it's still there, take it." "You're being cruel." "No," I said softly. "I'm being accurate." He swallowed. "You've changed." "No," I corrected. "You just never met this version because you never handed her a reason to exist." He didn't reply. He walked away. This time I didn't watch him go. I closed the door and started planning the gala. By Friday, the neighborhood had fully chosen sides. Some people pretended neutrality. Others brought popcorn. Linda, of course, tried to collect data from both camps under the guise of kindness. "Elena, honey," she said, "if there's anything I can do—" "If I need someone to narrate the downfall on a podcast, I'll call you," I said. She smiled, unaware I wasn't joking. The night before the gala, I sat at my desk with my notebook open and wrote the final 3 steps. 1. Expose Harper publicly. 2. Ensure Brian loses job security. 3. Deliver final humiliation. Then, beneath it, I wrote the final line. When the curtain falls, walk away. No epilogue, no forgiveness. I closed the notebook. The next phase would not be silent. The next phase would be an orchestra, and I had front row seating. The night of the charity gala felt exactly like the kind of evening where something beautiful was about to break. Not loudly, not dramatically, more like the slow, satisfying snap of a porcelain figurine that's been held too tightly for too long. The neighborhood had polished itself for the occasion. Manicured lawns, freshly swept sidewalks, women in pastel dresses rehearsing polite greetings they didn't mean. The venue, a renovated community hall with chandeliers the HOA bragged about in newsletters, was ready to host its annual night of wealthy guilt disguised as generosity. It was perfect, which meant it was also the ideal stage for collapse. I didn't dress like a woman seeking revenge. I dressed like a woman already delivered from irritation. Simple black dress, hair smooth, expression calm enough to make people wonder if I'd forgiven something no one knew I hadn't. My entrance didn't turn heads, but it collected glances. People looked, paused, and then kept looking a little longer than they meant to, because nothing is more suspicious in suburbia than a serene woman. Harper, of course, arrived late. That was her brand, always timed, never accidental. Her dress was blush pink, one of those shades that looked expensive even if it wasn't, and her smile was the kind you only see on people who haven't realized the ceiling is already cracking above them. She spotted me. My expression didn't move. Hers flickered. Progress. The welcome speech began, hosted by a local businessman who believed charisma was a volume setting. He boomed through the microphone about community, compassion, and investing in our future, while most of the room checked their phones under the table, waiting for the wine refills. Harper was up next. This was the part I came for. The moment she unfolded her speech card on stage, the room hushed, not from admiration, but from curiosity. She'd been the subject of just enough suburban whispers to make every person in the room lean in, waiting not for inspiration, but for cracks. She began, smooth, practiced, soft voice, the kind of performance that would have landed perfectly in a world where nothing had been exposed yet. But this was not that world. So while Harper was thanking sponsors and pretending she was still the moral centerpiece of the community, I tapped my phone screen once, cueing the wireless file upload I'd prepared the night before. Projector, linked, scheduled. I waited. 2 more sentences. 1 breath. Then, the screen behind her flickered. The slideshow that had been showing charity photos shifted into something new. A screenshot. Text messages. Tell her the stain was pasta sauce. She won't question it. She trusts you. Gasps moved through the room like a gust of wind through blinds. Harper froze mid-sentence. People leaned forward. Another screenshot. If she finds out, I'll say she's unstable. Then another. Brian's name. Harper's name. Timestamps. Receipts. Hotel confirmation. Side by side with the charity logo she had plastered everywhere. The silent auction volunteers stopped writing bids. Someone dropped a wine glass. Harper turned toward me, eyes wide, face pale under the stage lights, like someone who just realized the only exit was locked from the outside. I didn't move. She tried to keep talking, voice shaky now, but every word collided with the waterfall of evidence behind her, each slide shifting like the world adjusting to a new truth. And then the final screen appeared, a single sentence, white text on black. Integrity is not a decoration. It's a skill. No attribution, no signature, no need, because everyone already knew this wasn't an accident. Someone stood up, then another. Side conversations broke into full-volume judgments. Brian's wrongdoing had started the fall, but Harper, she'd packaged it, decorated it, sold it as harmless. Now she couldn't even finish a speech. She walked off stage to the sound of whispers sharpened into knives. The chandelier light made her look like someone being inspected under glass. She saw me again, not a glare, not even anger, just the silent panic of someone realizing they should have looked both ways before stepping into traffic. I didn't blink. I wasn't done yet. Outside, the cold air held the kind of stillness that only happens right before someone cries, confesses, or collapses. Harper found me near the parking lot. "You did this," she said, voice tight, shaking, not with fear, but humiliation. "Yes," I said. "You ruined my career." "No," I corrected. "You did that. I just made sure the audience didn't miss the performance." "You think you're better than me?" "I think I'm quieter than you," I said, "and people always underestimate the quiet one." She stepped closer, like she wanted to slap me or scream. Instead, she whispered, "Brian told me you were fragile, that you wouldn't do anything, that you'd cry and move on." "Well," I said, "looks like Brian didn't know me either." She looked like she wanted to breathe fire. I walked away before she found the air for it. Before I reached my car, I heard her say, "You'll pay for this?" I turned, smiling slightly. "No," I replied. "You already did." Brian called that night, 4 times. I didn't answer until the 5th. His voice was a mixture of desperation and rehearsed outrage. "You humiliated me. You humiliated us. Do you realize what you've done?" "Interesting question," I said. "Here's mine. When you were unbuttoning your shirt in that hotel room, did you ever think about what you'd done?" He was silent, not because he didn't have a comeback. He just didn't have one that worked on me anymore. "They're suspending me," he said finally. "HR wants a full investigation. They froze my company card. I could lose my job." "You will," I said simply. "You can't just decide that." "No, but the documents you falsified did." He hesitated. "We can fix this. Sit down, talk, work through it." "You want to talk now?" I asked. "After months of lies?" "I made a mistake." "No," I said, sharper now. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. You built a side relationship, paid for it with shared funds, used a business trip as cover, told strangers more truth than you ever told your wife, and called me unstable as a backup plan. That's not a mistake. That's a lifestyle." He tried to interrupt, but I kept going. "And just to clarify, this isn't punishment. This is balance. You tip the scale, it evens. Simple math." His voice dropped to a whisper. "What do you want?" I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "That question is 3 weeks late." I hung up. No yelling, no tears, just a clean cut, because some conversations aren't meant to be recycled. The next day, Greg texted, "That was legendary. She's packing her things." I didn't have to raise my voice once. "Thank you." I typed, "Don't thank me. Just keep the files in case she tries a comeback tour." He replied with a laughing emoji, which was interesting because I hadn't been joking. Meanwhile, Brian tried a new strategy, damage control by proximity. He showed up at the house unannounced again, suit wrinkled, tie hanging like it was tired of working for him. "Elena," he said, "this doesn't have to end like this." "It already ended," I said. "You're just late to the announcement." "I still love you." I blinked once. He said it like someone offering expired coupons. "You love the version of me who didn't know," I said, "but that version got replaced." He looked around the house like he wanted something to hold on to. His gaze landed on the framed wedding photo on the shelf. Us smiling, us uncracked. That version had been lovely, but that version was extinct. "You can't just erase everything we had," he said quietly. "Brian," I replied, "you erased it first. I just swept the crumbs into a visible pile." Before he could reply, I pointed to the staircase behind him. "Your things are packed in storage bins, labeled, organized by category. You can pick them up any time this week." "You already packed my life away." "No," I said, "just the part of it that doesn't belong here anymore." He swallowed, and I watched his confidence dissolve one layer at a time. Then he walked out again, and this time there was no door slam, no shouting, no last stand speech, just footsteps of a man who realized that no version of him could fix the structure after he'd set the foundation on fire. The next phase was cleanup, not emotional cleanup, but structural. I met with a lawyer, I met with the bank, I met with a real estate agent to discuss the condo ownership transfer Brian was now too financially fragile to contest. And with every step, I felt something I didn't expect. Not triumph, not revenge high, just clarity. I wasn't doing this to get even. I was doing this to get free. 3 nights later, I pulled into Harper's driveway with the final item on my checklist: Brian's wardrobe. Every shirt, every tie, every pair of socks he cared enough to match. All neatly folded, all packed in labeled bins. I placed them gently on her porch, just like the original plan. Then I taped one note to the top bin: Return to Cheetah. Simple, neutral, final. I rang the bell once, then walked back to my car. No dramatic goodbye, no confrontation scene, because the story wasn't about them anymore. It was about exit. Before driving off, I looked at the house one last time. 2 cheetahs, 1 ruined career, 1 broken reputation, and all because they underestimated silence. What a satisfying equation. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my notebook. I flipped past pages labeled plan, evidence, targets, and found the very first line I'd written weeks ago. Let him lie. Let him relax. Let him think he wins. I drew a single line through it. Then I wrote, he didn't. And for the first time since the pasta sauce era began, I closed the notebook with nothing left to plan. Tomorrow would come, but it wouldn't bring a sequel, because the curtain had already fallen, and I was already walking off stage. The morning after I dropped off Brian's wardrobe on Harper's porch, I expected a storm. Not a literal one, just the emotional kind, where cheetahs start calling, neighbors start whispering louder, and someone inevitably tries to explain themselves into redemption. Instead, I woke up to a strange kind of calm. The kind that comes not from peace, but from certainty. Everything was in motion now. Nothing needed pushing. I made coffee. I sat at the table. I didn't check my phone first thing, and that was when I knew I had crossed a threshold. I no longer cared about reactions. The fallout was happening with or without my supervision. Brian, of course, was not built for silence. By 9:17 a.m., the text began. Brian, we need to talk. Brian, I saw what you did. Real mature. Brian, you put my clothes on her porch. Really? Brian, call me before this gets worse. I read them. I didn't reply. He followed with a voicemail. I didn't listen. Not because I didn't care what he said, but because I already knew the tone. Apology disguised as outrage. Blame disguised as confusion. A man still trying to negotiate the lease on a life he already moved out of. Around noon, he escalated to a knock on the door. Not a soft one, the kind a person uses when they think volume equals authority. I looked through the peephole, saw him standing there, jaw tight, phone still in his hand, like he planned to present it as Exhibit A in a courtroom no one invited him to. I opened the door halfway. You really think this is how adults handle problems? He said. You're right, I said. Adults don't handle problems. They avoid them, lie about them, then melt down when the truth walks in anyway. You're an excellent example. He exhaled sharply. This is out of control. HR wants me to come in Monday. They've got the invoices, the screenshots. Someone sent my manager the whole file. That's wild, I said, almost like someone made sure he couldn't pretend he didn't know. His eyes narrowed. You're enjoying this? No, I replied. I'm not performing emotional labor for a man who thought loyalty was optional. Enjoyment is a different category. He ran a hand through his hair. The signature move of a man trying to rearrange reality by rearranging his hairstyle. We can still fix this, he said. I can talk to Harper. I can rewrite the emails. I can... Stop, I cut in, holding up a hand. You can't undo things. You can't rewrite paper trails. You can't unkiss people in parking lots. You can't unsay the sentence, she's unstable, when referring to your wife. We're past the editing stage. This is the published version. You're being dramatic. You're being faithless, I said, and the only difference is that mine is reversible. Yours isn't. He clenched his jaw. You want everything, don't you? The house, the accounts, the reputation. You want me ruined. No, I said simply. I want an accurate ending. You wrote the middle. I'm writing the conclusion. He stared at me for 3 long seconds. Then he walked away. This time he didn't slam the door. He didn't even close it hard. He just left like someone carrying the full weight of choices he'd finally realized were permanent. I should have known he wasn't done. Men like Brian never leave things at you win. They need one final attempt to flip the board, even if all the pieces are already on the floor. And his attempt arrived in the form of a phone call an hour later, not to me, but to my principal. Apparently, Brian tried to plant the idea that I was sabotaging his career out of emotional instability, which would have been hilarious if it weren't so predictable. He even implied that my work performance might be impacted by stress, which was code for, if she looks unbalanced, maybe I look less guilty. The principal called me in. I walked into the office ready, calm, smooth. No panic, no anxiety. She shut the door gently and said, I received a strange message this morning. I'm going to ask you a single question, and I'll believe whatever you tell me. Are you okay? Do you need time off for anything? I blinked. Not what I expected. I'm fine, I said. Just navigating a divorce with someone who doesn't handle consequences gracefully. She nodded. Thought so. He sounded like he was trying to frame a narrative. I don't engage with those. If there were ever a moment I felt gratitude in my spine, it was then. Thank you, I said. You're a model teacher, she added. Don't let someone else's panic define your story. I walked out of her office lighter than I walked in. I also walked out with a refreshed understanding. Brian wasn't just falling. He was clawing at anything he could drag down with him. Which meant it was time for the next turn in the story. Not defense. Offense. That afternoon, I met Greg at a diner 2 towns over. Neutral ground, no neighbors, no gossip. He was already seated, arms crossed on the table, coffee untouched. Harper tried calling me 6 times last night, he said. Let me guess, I replied. She wants forgiveness because she's suddenly spiritual. She said she made a mistake, he said. Then she said she never meant to hurt me. Then she asked if I could just let this pass for the sake of dignity. I snorted. Dignity is something you protect before the scandal, not after. He smiled faintly. A tired smile, but a real one. She doesn't understand how quiet payback works, he said. They never do, I agreed. Then I leaned in. Brian is trying to play the unstable wife card. I need to bury that angle before he gets confident. Greg nodded slowly. I can help. What do you have? He reached into his bag and placed a small recording device on the table. She made a call 2 weeks ago, he said. Didn't know I was in the next room. She was talking to Brian. I recorded it because something felt wrong. Listen. He pressed play. Harper's voice came through, casual, whispering, almost amused. If Elena finds out, just say she's been acting weird. You told me she's always anxious. Just lean into that. Then Brian's voice. I can frame it that way. She trusts me. People will believe it. That was it. 2 lines. 2 lines that could end his unstable wife defense permanently. I looked at Greg. This is good, I said. This is necessary, he corrected. People like them build their confidence on the assumption that other people won't gather proof. I nodded. He was right. The proof was no longer emotional. It was documented, saved, and time-stamped. The next day, I forwarded the audio file to Brian's HR department, not anonymously, signed, stamped, dated, attached with a single-line message. In case he tries to reframe the situation, no accusations, no emotional paragraphs, just evidence. Let the facts roast slowly. 2 days later, Brian showed up again, not at my house. At my school. Unannounced. Big mistake. He waited in the parking lot like a man staging a dramatic reunion, but I walked right past him. Elena, he called, jogging to catch up. I'm at work, I said. This is not the place. HR contacted me, he said, voice cracking. They're escalating to legal review. They said there was an audio file. There was. You sent it? Yes. How could you? I told the truth. How could you? He stared at me, eyes searching for sympathy the way a gambler searches for an extra card in his sleeve. You're destroying everything, he whispered. No, I said, I'm revealing everything. You're destroying yourself. Then I walked inside. He didn't follow. Maybe because even he knew there are certain doors you don't chase someone through, especially once you've taught them exactly what you're capable of. That night, something unexpected happened. Not from Brian, from Harper. She texted me. A single message. Meet me. One time. Neutral space. No drama. I just want to talk. I stared at it for a full minute. Curiosity is a dangerous shape. Sharp on one side, reflective on the other. I finally replied, 4 p.m. tomorrow. Park bench outside City Hall. She agreed. I didn't tell Greg. I didn't tell Sophie. This conversation needed no witnesses. It needed clarity. Harper arrived in sunglasses and a beige coat, like she was either hiding from paparazzi or auditioning for a sad perfume ad. She sat, shoulders tight, posture proud in a way that looked breakable. You got what you wanted, she said. I'm out. Greg's done. My job is in question. My client's bailed. So what now? You parade around feeling righteous. No, I said calmly. I move on. That's what comes next. She looked at me, confused. So you're done? Yes, I said. I'm not interested in dragging you forever. You've already drowned. She frowned. You aren't even angry? I thought about that. I was, I said. Now I'm just finished. She laughed once, bitter, short. You know what Brian told me? He said you'd eventually forgive him, that you'd settle down and stay, that you didn't have the courage to actually do anything that mattered. I nodded. He misunderstands quiet people. She stared at me, and I could tell she was recalibrating who she thought I was. Not the doormat wife, not the fragile one, not the non-threat, but the woman who watched, noted, and timed the ending. You win, she said. No, I replied. You lose. That's different. She stood up to leave. Halfway through turning, she paused. Brian says you ruined his life. I shook my head. Brian ruined his life. I just didn't cover it up. She walked away, coat swinging behind her like a curtain, closing on an actress whose show had been cancelled mid-season. I didn't look back. I'd already seen the last scene. That evening, Greg sent a photo, a moving truck. Harper's belongings being loaded. He captioned it, "Stage cleared." For the first time in weeks, I let out a full, deep laugh. Not sharp, not victorious, just clean. I didn't hear from Brian again that week. Then the inevitable happened. HR terminated him. Not suspended, terminated. Cause, falsified reports, misappropriation of funds, breach of policy, no severance, no reference. Corporate grace has a barcode. You break it, you pay the full retail price. He texted me a single sentence. I hope you're happy. I replied, I'm finally neutral. He didn't answer, which, in its own way, was the closest thing to peace we were ever going to have. By Sunday, the condo paperwork was finalized. His name off, mine on, fully, permanently. His lawyer didn't even resist. Brian couldn't afford the fight, couldn't afford much of anything now. I met the real estate officer, signed the documents, accepted the keys I already physically owned, but now legally owned alone. A strange moment, not triumphant, not emotional, just steady. As I walked to my car, keys in hand, I realized something softly profound. Winning doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like oxygen. I drove home, parked in the driveway, turned off the engine, sat for a while, engine ticking as it cooled. That was when I finally whispered the sentence I hadn't allowed myself until then. It's over. Not the marriage. Not the drama. Not the revenge. The wait. And yet, life has a sense of rhythm. Just when I settled into the quiet, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, one message. Don't get too comfortable. Brian thinks you're not done. He's planning something. Be ready. No signature, no context, no follow-up. Just a reminder that even when you close a chapter, someone else might still be bookmarking a page. I stared at the message. Then I smiled. I'm always ready, I whispered, because the story might be nearing its end. But it wasn't finished. Not yet. The morning sunlight crept through the blinds, casting long stripes across the polished hardwood floor, illuminating the quiet suburban battlefield. Today wasn't about planning or observation. It was about execution. The final confrontation, the last act in a play that had been weeks in the making. Every detail had been accounted for, every move calculated. I didn't need adrenaline. I needed patience and timing, and I had both. I dressed carefully, not flashy, not attention-grabbing. Black trousers, white blouse, blazer lightly pressed. Neutral colors, professional, calm. The kind of outfit that signals control without shouting it. My hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. A woman prepared to take her life back, step by step, calmly, deliberately. The plan was simple. Lure both Brian and Harper into one space, allow them to unravel naturally, and record the moment for posterity. No violence beyond the metaphorical. No dramatic theatrics that could backfire. Pure logic, precise timing. Everything in the garden of chaos would bloom exactly the way I wanted. I arrived first at the city park, a neutral place, one of those benches that sits under trees old enough to know every secret whispered beneath them. Perfect vantage points, escape routes, witness potential. Timing was everything. The window to strike without suspicion would last only moments. Brian was the first to appear, hair disheveled, tie crooked, eyes darting around as though searching for an audience. I let him stew for a moment before speaking. "Good morning," I said, voice smooth, controlled. "You found the spot?" He started. "Elena, I didn't expect you here first." "I always like to have the first word," I replied. "Timing is critical." He tried to speak again, but I held up my hand. "Not yet," I said. "We wait for your co-star. Don't worry, she'll arrive." Harper, true to form, showed up precisely 6 minutes later. Sunglasses on, faint perfume scent of someone trying to assert sophistication, but nerves evident in the way she avoided eye contact. I didn't react. I let them settle in, side by side, unaware I had already calculated the perfect moment for tension to peak. "Thank you both for coming," I began. Calm, neutral. Public speaking practiced, but the audience was private. I thought it was necessary to have a clear conversation. One last conversation, not for reconciliation, but for clarity. Brian blinked, Harper tensed. You've been running a story in parallel to reality for weeks, I continued. Constructing narratives, hiding truth, assuming that your versions would survive scrutiny. They won't. Harper tried to interject. Elena, Not yet, I said. You'll have your turn, but not until you've heard me. Brian, your assumptions that I'd remain passive, that I wouldn't leverage the evidence you so generously left behind, were optimistic. I collected every piece, every receipt, every message, every lie. He swallowed. She shifted. Their combined discomfort was almost visible, like heat rippling off concrete. Now, I said, let's discuss consequences. Public perception, professional fallout, social standing, and of course, marital trust, or lack thereof. Harper tried again, voice shaky. You constructed your own undoing, I said, eyes steady on hers. Every message, every hotel plan, every attempt to manipulate me and Greg. You created your own downfall. Brian's jaw twitched. You can't, he began. I can, I replied softly, because unlike you, I acted logically, not impulsively, and unlike you, I leveraged every fact without embellishment or exaggeration. At that precise moment, I motioned subtly, and from the shadows, Greg appeared, not to intervene, but to witness. Presence confirmed. Silent testimony in the wings, the subtle weight of accountability pressing down. I reached into my tote and pulled out a small folder, placing it on the bench between us. It contained copies of the hotel receipts, the screenshots of messages, the audio recording of Harper and Brian conspiring to portray me as unstable. I didn't hand it to them. I just placed it in view. This, I said, voice calm, is factual, not opinion, not interpretation, just documentation of your choices. Harper's hands clenched in her coat pockets. Brian leaned back, attempting composure that failed at every micro-expression. Their combined realization had begun. The foundation of their little world had been meticulously dismantled without a single shout, without public spectacle, without physical confrontation. And yet, it was already unraveling. You think this is over? Harper whispered, almost pleading. I tilted my head. No, it is not over, but it is ending. For you both, simultaneously. Brian's voice cracked. You can't do this. He tried again. I raised a hand. Please, I don't need dramatics. I need honesty. You chose to deceive. You created the conditions. I am merely enacting the logical result. Then I stood, walked slowly along the bench to Harper's side, eyes level with hers. You wanted impact. You wanted influence. You wanted him. You built this house of cards with your own hands, and now it collapses in front of the audience you never considered, everyone who knows the truth. She flinched, a subtle, involuntary movement, the kind that betrays inner comprehension. I reached out lightly, not to strike, but to flip her purse onto the grass, spilling its contents, lipstick, a designer notebook with event schedules, receipts, everything carefully catalogued. No violence, no damage beyond the natural humiliation of exposure. Her belongings were intact but displayed publicly. You underestimated the quiet one, I said, and the patient one, and the one who keeps track. Brian tried to intervene, moved toward me. I held up a hand. He froze mid-step. I didn't touch him. He realized, belatedly, that force would achieve nothing. This wasn't about physical dominance. It was about perception, control, and the clarity of consequence. Everything you've relied upon, your charm, your timing, your assumptions, crumbled today, I said. And it crumbles because I chose precision over drama. Harper's eyes glistened. Not tears, just recognition. Recognition of her miscalculation, of her overconfidence, of her lack of foresight. Brian's expression morphed from defiance to disbelief. He understood, in that instant, that professional ruin, social humiliation, and the dismantling of their plans were inevitable. I stepped back, letting them absorb the reality fully. Silence stretched, thick, measured, waited. The sound of birds, distant traffic, rustling leaves, it was the soundtrack of a world settling into balance. Their world had shifted. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to strike. The evidence spoke, and the narrative had already changed. Brian's phone buzzed, likely HR, or perhaps Harper attempting a last-ditch explanation. He ignored it. He looked at me. For the first time, the arrogance, the control, the hubris were gone from his eyes, replaced by something softer, though not regret, just the recognition that their version of reality no longer applied. Harper tried to collect herself. Elena, I held up a finger. One moment. Consider every choice, every misstep, every manipulated narrative. Now see the result. Everything you tried to control is visible, transparent, and permanent. There is no court of appeal here, only observation. I stepped back, letting Greg enter the frame, just enough for Harper and Brian to notice. Silent witness, proof of alliance, confirmation of finality. Then I gestured to the evidence folder. These are the documented facts. Not my opinions, not speculation, just outcomes. Brian's hands fell to his sides. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Harper's lips pressed together. They understood. The final act was underway, and they had no lines left. I reached down, picked up a small bottle of red paint I'd concealed in my tote earlier, and lightly flicked a dab on the corner of Harper's car seat, just enough to stain, just enough to mark the moment, no damage beyond embarrassment. A physical reminder of consequence, subtle yet undeniable. She recoiled, but there was no harm, only the unmistakable assertion that misjudgment had consequences. Brian leaned in, confused. Why are you? Because, I said, voice low, deliberate. Some lessons are clearer when they can be seen, touched, and remembered. He realized finally that humiliation and accountability could be administered without confrontation, without violence, without theatrics, just clarity, calculated exposure, precise timing. I stepped back again, quietly, calmly, eyes level, steady. This was the final display. Their choices, their manipulations, their assumptions, they all ended here, under the witness trees, in the open air, in the truth's gentle, unyielding light. I didn't raise my voice, didn't gesture dramatically. I didn't speak another word. I simply watched, measured, patient, observing as the subtle ripples of realization passed over them. The embarrassment, the exposure, the quiet acknowledgement that their plans had unraveled like sand through fingers. And then, the final moment arrived. Harper's shoulders sagged. Brian's gaze dropped. A pair of neighbors wandered by, witnesses by accident, observing the tableau, without realizing they were part of it. The world kept moving. Birds flew, leaves fell. The sun shifted slightly in the sky. I smiled, not because of triumph, not because of satisfaction, because precision, patience, and logic had created a peak moment of consequence. All predictable, all clean, all complete. I stepped toward my car, every action calculated, fluid, unhurried. The chaos remained with them. The evidence remained in plain sight. The truth remained undeniable. And I walked away, leaving them to reconcile with the outcome I had orchestrated, knowing I had engineered the final act to its highest, most intense point. I reached my vehicle, keys in hand, a single glance back. Harper frozen mid-step, Brian staring at the folder, now lying on the bench between them. The city park, quiet but not still, had witnessed it all. The play was over. The curtain had fallen. I was leaving stage left, unmarked, unscarred, and entirely unshaken. No epilogue awaited me. No reflection needed. Just the steady, calm certainty of a plan executed flawlessly. The crescendo had been reached. The justice was visible, undeniable, complete. The peak action, logical, satisfying, and conclusive, had concluded exactly as I intended. And for the first time in weeks, I breathed fully, calmly, finally.